Mhm. I'm from Missouri, and it's not where I was born, but me and my parents moved here a little bit before I even turned two. So in my heart and in my mind, this is home. And one thing about Missouri is it's known as the show me state. And part of that is this stubbornness and spirit of you have to show me among a lot of the people here. And in fact, our state animal is even a mule, an animal known, at least partly, for its stubbornness. And I would venture to say that same stubbornness exists in me also, since my mom has called my dad and I stubborn Missouri mules more than a couple times over the years. And, we talk a lot about identities and who we are and what traits we have, such as stubbornness. And not only does our passage today show that Thomas, the disciple Thomas, kind of has that same stubbornness, and that's why I kind of like to think of him as the show me disciple in that same vein. But it also does a great job showing who Jesus is. And I don't know that we talk about who Jesus is in his truest identity very much. And so, a little bit of backstory before we get to our passage in John 20. At this point, Jesus has been executed and hung on the cross, and his disciples have dispersed because they're afraid they'll be next. And not only did the two women from the tomb, but the two men that were on their way to Emmaus all come to the disciples, telling them, "We've seen him. He's back." And the disciples have refused to believe it until one Sunday night in the upper room, behind a locked door. And at this point, it was a big deal that they were even meeting because they were all dispersed and scared. I mean, with them all together, why wouldn't the Jewish leaders come for them? Jesus appears in the middle of the room to them. And that brings us to the first couple verses from our passage, which are John 20, 24, and 25, which say, "But Thomas, called Twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were telling him, 'We've seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'If I don't see the marks of the nails in his hands and put my finger into the hole in his side, I will never believe.'" So, for whatever reason it may be, Thomas wasn't there the first time Jesus appeared to the disciples. And so they go to tell him about this, probably excited and energetic. And to Thomas, they probably seem a little bit frantic. "We've seen him. He's back. He really showed up right out of thin air in the middle of the room. And we thought it might have even been a ghost, but it wasn't. He was there in flesh and blood, just so excited." And what was Thomas's response? Was it, "Oh, that's so cool," or, "Man, I'm sorry I missed that. Hopefully he'll appear to me next"? No, neither of those. A lot of times over the years, we've given Thomas the nickname Doubting Thomas, and his response here is where that comes from. And going back earlier a little bit, Thomas's Missouri side comes out here because he basically says, "You have to show me that he's back. Unless I can put my hand in the nail hole and put my hand in the hole in his side, I will not believe." And an interesting note I read from Colin Kruse on this is that Thomas's refusal to believe is expressed through a double negative, showing that he was adamant about it. So it's not just that he didn't believe them. His not believing them was strong and probably came off as a little combative and maybe even a little bit rude. But see, the thing is, it's not like Jesus came and visited again right there and appeared. "Ha, got you, Thomas, it's real." A whole week went by of what I'm guessing was building tension between a group of people that wanted to tell their friends something exciting and him being combative and probably a little bit rude about not believing them. Now, I do want to note it's not that Thomas didn't believe that they saw something. He just didn't believe they saw what they said they saw. He probably thought they saw a ghost. But this brings us to the next Sunday night where they're once again gathered in the same upper room behind the same locked door. And that brings us to verse 26. A week later, his disciples were indoors again, and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." So the door is locked, Jesus didn't come in through the door. He pops up in the middle of the room again out of thin air to appear to the disciples and to Thomas. Imagine this from Thomas's perspective. You spent a whole week being adamant and stubborn and combative that this wasn't real. And then Jesus shows up and proves you wrong. I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I would probably be trying to slink into the back of the room a little bit and keep the attention off of me. And on the flip side of that coin, if I'm the disciples, I'm probably saying like, ooh, see, Thomas, you were wrong. He was right, and putting the attention on him. But what happened next? That brings us to verse 27, which says, "Then he said to him, 'Put your fingers here and look into my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Don't be faithless, but believe.'" See, we see Jesus give Thomas what his human nature required, to put his hands in the nail hole and his hand in the side hole. Jesus met Thomas where he was with his doubts here because he realized Thomas's doubt came from a searching heart, not a cold and hardened heart. But at the same time, we do see Thomas show some tough love to Thomas here in front of everyone. You don't believe? Fine. Put your finger in here. Put your hand in the spear hole in my side. And so how did Thomas respond in this moment? The text says he fell to his knees and simply said, "My Lord and my God." At the sight of Jesus, Thomas's doubts vanished, and he no longer needed to run his test. At Jesus' invitation there, Thomas realized that the resurrection, A, proved what Jesus had predicted about being raised from the dead was true, and B, proved that he was the Son of God. My Lord and my God. I'm going to say that again and invite you guys to say it with me, but focus on the word "my" there, because Jesus did come for all of us so we can have personal relationships with him. My Lord and my God. In just 5 words there, Thomas gave us the identity of Christ. It's not about a baby that was born next to some donkeys or a 12-year-old that was holding his own in a conversation with the biblical leaders of the day, or a man that walked on water, or even the man that was killed and executed and raised again. This is about the truest identity of Jesus. My Lord and my God, not just a Lord and a God, or the Lord and the God. It's about when you develop a personal relationship with him and when he becomes yours. You may be wondering, does this confession from Thomas or that one little 2-letter word really make that big of a difference? And the simple answer is yes, it does. It's easy to grow up in church and know a lot about God and know fun facts about Jesus, but never really dig into it or build a relationship and actually know them on a personal level. When you give your life over to him and start following him as your personal Lord and Savior, that's when the things you hear at church and the things you read stop becoming facts you know about God and start becoming truths that you believe in your heart that guide you. That's when doubt becomes belief, and it's when you stop going to church on Sundays because you feel like you have to and start going because it's an opportunity to further build and further develop a true personal relationship with him. I don't listen to much rap music, but I heard a sermon on church one Sunday by the great theologian, Dr. Billy Strother, and he mentioned a song by Christian rapper Lecrae called "Don't Waste Your Life." And I listened to it driving on the 30-minute drive back to school from church that day, and it's been in my library since then. And one of the lyrics is, "If he's truly raised to life, this news should really change your life." So since he is raised, let's let it change our lives. Let's have it do what it was supposed to do. Pursue God on a personal level, not just to know more about him, but to truly follow him and have a personal relationship with him. Spend time in his word every day. Spend time in worship and in prayer. Strive to dig deeper and make it about a personal relationship, not just a religion that you follow because your parents followed. Make your faith your faith. Like we said earlier, Jesus met Thomas where he was with his doubts. But in verse 29, he says, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen, and yet believe. When we make our faith, and build that personal relationship with him, and strive after him and follow after him, that's when we can start to believe without needing to see first. My Lord and my God. The end of the passage goes on to talk about how it was written so that we may have faith and believe that Jesus was the Christ and live off of that faith. So build your faith and believe in him. And if you have doubts and you have questions, that's natural. That'll happen to all of us at some point in life, I'm pretty sure. But don't harden your heart to those doubts. Search for answers and make your faith your own.